Hi, everybody. You're listening to Wake Up with Patti Catter, and today I have a special guest for you. His name is Gabe Wren, and Gabe is an independent filmmaker, producer, director. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on because you mentioned to me that you served in more than one branch of military, and I'm always excited to kind of hear more about the thought process behind that.
Right.
But before we go all there, just tell my listeners a little bit about yourself.
How far back you want to go? Like,
Oh, to the day you were born. You remember
okay,
when you were coming out of your mother's womb?
I do. I was born in the state of confusion is where I was at. Wasn't sure what was happening. And then all of a sudden there was a bright light. And I guess it's the same when you die, right? You see a bright light when you start, you see a bright light when you die. It's like this
Yeah.
circle.
That's what I
Um,
hear.
no, so I came from Northern California originally. And I was a rodeo cowboy in high school, rode bulls and broncs, and then ended up for a very short time trying my hand at the pro rodeo while I was in the Marine Corps, obviously, that side.
Mhm.
I joined the Marine Corps right out of high school and then stayed there for 4 years until the war kicked off. And then I went back after a small break in service and ended up in the Army. Did that for one contract and then switched over to the Air Force for a contract and then came back to the Army and stayed there until about 2013 and then got out.
Mhm. So my son mentioned to me there's a big difference between the Army and the Marines, and it's the Army, they don't even blouse their boots, is what he said.
Yeah, there's a massive difference. Structurally, all the branches have kind of the same jobs and purpose, but we all have different tasks within the DoD. And so switching from branch to branch isn't as difficult as you would think it is, other than understanding the rank structure. Like, I think the thing that got me between um, the biggest one was the Air Force. Like the Marines and the Army was very similar, except for a discipline level, which the Marine Corps has over the top of them.
Mhm.
But the Air Force was the one that got me, and I only stayed there for a year, and then I had to go.
Mhm.
I couldn't handle it.
Mhm.
When I got there, I was walking around with my service record book in hand. I'm just walking around, and this officer comes up to me. He goes, "Hey, are you checking in?" And I was like, I got position of attention, sounded off. I was like, "Yes, sir, I'm checking in. I'm looking for the office." And he goes, "Oh, let's come right down here." And he goes, "Who you with?" And I told him, and he goes, "Oh, hey, I think his name was Joe or something." He's like, "I'm Joe. I'm your commander. Nice to meet you. What's your name?" And I said, Sergeant Wren. And he goes, "No, what's your first name?" And I was like, I don't know about that.
I was thinking the same thing when you're talking the story through. I'm like, Joe.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, it's really strange.
yeah.
The Air Force is very lackadaisical in their structure. It's very much where the Marine Corps was like physical performance and ability to do your job. The Air Force, I noticed there was a lot of testing and a lot of ways to get rank that way. You had to test well, and then they included your physical fitness scores with that. In the Marine Corps, we didn't really care how you tested. We cared how your performance was.
Yeah, so how did you decide to go from it was the Marines to the Air Force,
I was
right?
Marines to
Or
the Army. Yeah.
the Army. Okay, and then the Air Force. So how did you only get and if this is too much question for you, let me know, but only a year in the Air Force.
Yeah. So I got out of the Marine Corps I'll date myself, in June of 2001. That was my first 4 year enlistment. And then when I got out, the war kicked off almost immediately after I got out. September happened, and then we were in Afghanistan. Um, and I sat back on the couch and watched the war happen for about 4 years. And in 2004, some of our guys went to Fallujah. It's a big battle over there. And some of the guys I knew were over there, and a couple of them got killed. And I just remember thinking that here I am, this 20 something year old guy who professes to love his country and believes in it. And I've got this big Marine Corps flag wherever I go. Um, and I'm watching it all happen. And so, I had a bit of, maybe survivor's guilt. I had a bit of conviction. And so I sought the Marine Corps out again, but it was 4 years past the time. And so a lot of us that tried to go back in the Marine Corps couldn't go back in the Marine Corps at that
Mhm.
point. And a buddy of mine told me, he's like, "Hey man, I just went and joined the Army and they took me." So I went and talked to an Army National Guard recruiter, is where I ended up going, and ended up in the infantry. It was a straight trade. So I came from the Marine Corps, went right into the infantry. Um, and I actually had a blast. The Army infantry guys were a lot like the Marines.
Mhm.
It was very similar. And I ended up on counter drug for a while, working drug teams, and then did one full cycle of that. And the Air Force was offering $10,000 bonuses. And so I was like, well, I mean, same job, 10,000 bucks extra, like why not? So I hopped over there, spent a year there. By the end of that first year, I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I did what's called a blue to green transfer, where,
Okay.
where literally you just like lateral back over to the other side.
Mhm.
And so I just went right back over to the other side and hopped a deployment to Afghanistan the year later,
Mhm.
and then finished out after Afghanistan in the Army, and then left.
Mhm. Wow, I wondered how that worked because I know my listeners would ask the same thing. So I'm like, wait a minute, you did a year. How does that even work? So that's a
Yeah,
really good explanation. And I don't think I've heard it that way. I've heard green to gold as the only
right.
colors that I know of. So that's a good explanation. Thank you for
Sure.
explaining that because I don't think some of my listeners would know. So you, how were you in school growing up? Like I'm talking elementary, middle, high school, and what made you decide to join the military in the first place?
Um, so I was all boy all the time. I mean, there was always those conversations with my mom and my dad at the school, like he's too rowdy, he's too hyper, he's too all these things. And now they just, medicate your kids to the
Yeah.
utter brink of stupidity. But back then
Hmm.
they would just, we got like when I went to school, we were still getting spanked by principals, like
Hmm.
that's how long ago that was. Um, and then you got spanked by the principal, and it was worse because then you go home and you get spanked by your dad as well because it's
Oh
like,
yeah. You're yeah.
double it up. But I spent so I was kind of raised all over the place until about fourth grade, and we ended up in a town called Durham, California, which is near Chico, California. It's in the northernmost part of California. Up there, it's actually considered, we call it the state of Jefferson because back in the early 1900s, they annexed from the entire state of California. Them in Southern Oregon, and they put up barricades and everything. It was this whole like coup. And so we're really proud of our Northern California heritage. It's very country, it's very rural, very red, very not Southern California.
Mhm.
Um, and so I grew up kind of rowdy, and I grew up, running around on dirt bikes and levee roads and in the country and working on rice farms and almond orchards um, and I was my grandpa was in the Navy in Korea, and so I always had this strong influence from him, for the military, and I loved hearing his stories. But I think what I always tell people is it's either born in you or it's not. There's a sense of there's a sense inside you that says I need to protect and I need to defend, and you either have it or you don't. I mean, there's
Mhm.
just my son is 15 right now, and he's in the Sea Cadets, and all he talks about is joining the military. And it's not because I sat there and beat it into him. It's because
Mhm.
it's innate in who he is. I mean, my family fought every single war all the way to the Revolution. Everybody, every man in my family, every generation has fought in a war all the way back to the Revolution. Um, and it's just I think it's just in your DNA.
Mhm. It is, I think, too. I remember hearing a study one time about the different things that are passed down in your DNA. And if you conceive before a certain time, for example, like if a military veteran has PTSD, but they are conceived before that, then the odds are their kid won't have that passed down to them or whatever,
Hmm.
those traits passed
Interesting.
down. Yeah. So I also remember hearing that something like military service, or maybe somebody's mother is a nurse, and then they always have that like strong urge to be a nurse.
Sure.
So yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
and my mom and dad were like my dad was an associate pastor growing up, and my
mhm,
mom was a preschool teacher, and so I always saw them in acts of service growing up. And then
mhm,
we had foster kids in and out of our home. And so it was another like act of service. And I was always meeting new people. And it's like, it kind of all just prepped me for the military,
mhm,
um, being in that type of environment. And so when I was 17 years old, it was June 15th of 1996. I walked into the recruiting station and walked around and checked all the different places out, and I really had no direction. I was kind of looking at the Coast Guard because I really was interested in their special warfare, their drug teams, and you know all that fun stuff. And
mhm.
then I looked at the Navy, and as I'm walking around these different offices, there's this Marine outside. He's just smoking a cigarette, and he's in his alphas at the no, not alphas. What was he in? He was in Bravos at the time, the blue pants, tan khaki shirt.
Mhm.
And so I walk through all these different recruiters, and I never even looked at the Marine Corps because I honestly had no idea what it was. I was that sheltered kid to the military where like I knew what the Navy was because of my grandpa, but I never explored the military, had no idea what was happening. And so I walk out of the Coast Guard, and at that time, affirmative action was a really big deal.
Mhm.
And so he goes, let me guess, you can't join for 2 years because you're a white male. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, huh? He goes, you try the Navy? And I was like, yeah, I don't know. And he goes, what about the Army? And I was like, nah, not really my thing. And he goes, all right, well, good luck. Right. And so that was his hook. And
Mhm.
his name was Sergeant Steve Koza, who still to this day is one of my closest friends.
Mhm.
I have no doubt will watch this when I send it to him.
Mhm.
He's been the biggest cheerleader in my life since the day I met him. And I said, well, what's with you guys? What do you guys do? And he just looks at me and he goes, probably not our kind. Right.
No, he didn't. You know, you're like, oh
uh,
yeah, I'm gonna prove you wrong.
and he knew just taking a look at me that was my motivation.
Mhm.
Because I've always been that guy, that kid that was like, tell me I can't.
Yeah.
I was always underestimated. I've been underestimated my whole life. Every scenario I walk into, it used to be a curse, and now it's a strength because
Mhm.
I walk in and I like to be underestimated.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
love
Yes.
walking in the room and not being counted,
Mhm.
because that gives me an advantage. It's a
Mhm.
tactical advantage at this point. So
Mhm.
he hooked me that day. I went home. I told my mom and dad, I was like, I want to join the Marine Corps because, and I started researching it and studying it and learning that it was like, the boot camp was the toughest boot camp you could do,
Mhm.
and so I did it. And for 1 year to the day that I left, I was in the delayed entry program, and Steve Koza cheered me on every day,
Mhm.
called me every
That's
day, and we spent a
amazing.
ton of time together. Um, and what's really funny about him is he is genuinely probably one of the best recruiters I've ever met, but he absolutely hated recruiting duty, hated it
Mhm.
with a passion. But he loved the Marine Corps so much that he believed in bringing in good people, and he would actually genuinely turn people away.
Mhm.
So he wasn't about the numbers. He was about, the needs of the Marine Corps and giving it the best opportunity.
That's the amazing thing about the Marines too is they don't have to accept everybody. They're smaller than some of the other branches, right? For a
Oh yeah.
reason.
Oh yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
that
that's quick story of how I got there.
mhm.
quick, quick.
That
So
that's amazing. I like it. I think we have a lot in common. Not the Marine Corps, but the whole, if you tell me I can't do something, I'm going to do it 5 times.
sure, sure.
So, you know. So one of the reasons that I wanted you on my show is you're in the process of, or there's a film getting ready to come out that I want to hear about. I like it because first of all, the military background in you says that that film is going to be really done as well as it can be. And then the other part of it is you mentioned that you're a strong man. For example, when you were younger, you had all these man tendencies already built
Mm-hmm.
inside of
Mm-hmm.
you, which I think is so important to highlight because too many times I think that men get a bad rap for being too manly, but you can't be manly enough to be on my show. So, the
It's
last, yeah.
that's funny. And I don't mean to interrupt you, but I hear that whole societal like, oh, too manly, toxic masculinity. But I come from a Christian background, and the Bible is very specific about what men should look like, right? Our heroes in the Bible are guys like David and Moses, you know, uh, and these were strong men that
Mhm.
stood up to adversity, that were willing to fight to the death, you know. I mean, Moses, not people understand this, but there's a small little piece in the Bible that talks about Moses. He was like a special forces kind of guy, like small unit tactics. He goes in the middle of the night under the cover of darkness. They kill everybody quietly, right? And then they
Mhm.
pillage the place. Like
Mhm.
those are our examples,
Mhm.
of what manly men look like. And
Mhm.
so I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
No, I think it's great because we need people to protect our country, and we can't
Hmm.
have a bunch of weak people leading the country. We just can't.
Right.
I mean, bad guys aren't weak. Bad guys don't care if your fingernails aren't looking nice, you know?
Right.
So I appreciate that good men can get tough and do harm when needed.
Can I
So
can I fix something real quick that's bothering me? All right,
absolutely.
give me a second, and
Yeah.
I'll all right, so what I'm about to fix has been bugging me since we started, and it's just because of the way this monitor system works. I've got
Mhm.
to change this flag around because it's all
I know.
backwards.
I saw it and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's bugging me. So let me fix this real quick.
Yeah, no problem. I
I don't want
like
to
it.
get called out by the Marine Corps populace and just be like, that guy's flag's crooked and backwards on the. So anyway, let me fix it.
All right, awesome. While you're doing that, we're just checking out your tattoos. Don't mind us. And he can't hear us right now because he took his ear pods off. Surprised he doesn't start singing the Halls of
Here, let's just
Montezuma.
make it do this.
Oh,
I'll
there
just
we
prop it
go.
up.
There we go.
There we go.
There we go.
It was hiding my safe anyway. Oh, this is
uh,
my office that I built inside the garage, just so I can edit. I've got like this whole console setup thing. You can't see it.
yeah, I like it. I've done podcasts out of my garage before. I get it.
Yeah, no, I literally built a 8 by 10 room inside my garage just to have an office because I'm in here when I'm editing. I'm in here, for weeks at a time.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah. So tell us about this film you're working on. And
Yes,
tell wait, back up for 1 second. How did you
sure.
go from military into producing films?
Yeah, gosh, it's a wild little journey. So I moved to Nashville, Tennessee, which is where I live now, south of Nashville, in 2013, right after I got out of the military. And I ended up on accident in the music business as a touring artist, playing and singing. Um, and that's actually how I met Adam Bird.
Oh
So,
my gosh, I didn't even realize you knew Adam.
oh, I've
I
known Adam. I've known Adam since 2015. We're really close.
Oh my gosh. And the funny thing is when you took your headphones out, I said something about I'm surprised he's not singing from the halls of Montezuma, and I didn't realize you had a music career.
Yeah,
So,
I did. I started in Nashville. I wrote a couple songs and they got synced to a television show back in 2016 called Outlaw Country.
mhm.
And it started just kind of launched me off on a little bit of a music career. And so I kept doing that for a while. And then I bought a gun store, which is like what every Marine should do, I think, at some point, own a gun
Yeah,
shop. And
absolutely.
so I owned a gun shop and I also owned a motorcycle repair shop doing Harleys.
Mhm.
And in the middle of all that, I was making these dumb videos for this new thing called Instagram because Vine had just like died,
Oh, I remember that
right?
platform. Yeah.
So Vine was like the big thing, right? It was these
Mhm.
little do it for the Vine stuff. Well,
Mhm.
Vine was dying, but this new thing, Instagram, had popped up, and I was like, oh, this is pretty neat. So I started massing a following out of this little bitty gun shop in Tennessee. And I had like, I mean, 30,000 plus like followers in this store. And I mean, my store, it was probably 20 20 by 20 at the most.
Mhm.
And I would go places and I'd be wearing my shirt and people would be like, "Hey man, you're the guy from the gun shop." And I'm like in town's like 4 hours away. They're like, "I love your videos." And I was like, "That's weird. Okay, people watch this stuff." And so as I was in the gun business, I a good friend of mine named Zeke Stout, who used to have he was on a podcast called Talking Lead for a long time, and then he ended up on a TV show called Master at Arms. He was a host. Well, him and I always kind of just bounced things off of each other and worked with each other and have for years. And so I got into doing videos for other people and kind of just slowly progressing. And then it was my old contacts from the music business called me up and they're like, "Hey, can you do music videos?" And I was like, "Why not?" Like I didn't know the first thing about shooting a music video.
Mhm.
And I was just like, "Why not? I'll take a shot at it." And then it's just escalated from that point to where we are now.
Mhm. That is amazing. Tell us about the film that you have coming out.
Yeah,
Or
so
it's a
I've
series, or tell me about
Well,
this.
a couple of things. Yeah. So I got a chance to work on a film that comes out November 23rd on Great American. It's a rom-com Christmas movie, and it's called A Little Women's Christmas. And it was written, the original story is written by Dion Sheehan, who is a amazing writer. She's 25 years old. She sold her first script at 25. I mean, she's just brilliant girl. Um, and that movie comes out on the 23rd of November. I think it's like 8 p.m. Central Time. And I got to work on that film. My friend Brandon Clark and his dad, they directed and produced it along with Brian Bird, who does a TV show called When Calls the Heart. It's a big show on Hallmark. Um, and so on that I met Dion, and previously to that, I had started working on this TV show called Flipping Farms, which is the show that it is now. And we went and shot the first part of the show back last year, and then I was able to work with a friend of mine named Jesse Hutch, who's is an actor in the rom-com world, but he does action films. He's on a new movie coming out called Homestead, and we were able to get a deal with Warner to put the show on streaming platforms. And so we went and finished up shooting just recently. I'm actually flying out to shoot a couple more shots here at the end of the week. And it's a show about a father and daughter that they buy farms, renovate the whole property, and then sell it for a profit. And it's not just the renovation, the show's actually about the relationship. It's kind of Duck Dynasty meets a Magnolia Farms Chip and Joanna Gaines thing.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, even the graphic for the show to promote the show was really eye-catching to me because I automatically went from one of those extreme home makeover kind of scenarios or something like that, but
Sure.
to a much better thought process of, wow, like flipping a farm is a big deal. It's not,
Oh yeah.
flipping a house, a whole farm. I mean, that's a lot.
Oh yeah, and the property that they renovate in this first season is, each episode has a renovation built in on the farm, but
Mhm.
also their characters are so big in real life that we just couldn't ignore that part of it. So we
Mhm.
built a story, from start to finish around the farm, but also Jeff, the dad, is just he's a character. I mean, he is I love that guy. Like I can live vicariously through some of his antics, and I think he could do the same through me.
Mhm.
But he gets into some pretty crazy stuff. He's very um off the wall. He's like buys random things. He's got a great sense of humor. And then his daughter Rachel, she's kind of the more like rule follower, structured type person, but she's also very funny in her own right. And so you put the two of them together and their relationship just really shines.
Yeah, it looks good. I want to see it. I also want to see that rom-com you're talking about.
Yeah, we just did the red carpet for that about a week ago,
Mhm.
here in Tennessee, where we shot all the footage for it. It's a really good film. I'm pretty proud of it.
That's exciting. Where can people find your films, or are they all over the place?
Yeah, so right now everything's just kind of like as an independent guy, you get called to go do a lot of different things, and
Mhm.
so um, I mean, check out A Little Women's Christmas. That's one of them. And then Flipping Farms, we have Instagram and Facebook set up, and we're working on the rest of it now. But if they want to follow Flipping Farms, they can find it's Flipping Farms Show, I believe is what it is on Instagram.
Mhm. And what is your Instagram handle?
Mine is Gabriel Wren. It's Gabriel_Wren TN.
Okay. And if you're listening to this, you can go to the show notes and you'll find it in the show notes as well. What else is coming up for you, Gabe? Do you have any plans or are you just kind of winging it as you go?
Um, I've been winging it my whole life,
Mhm.
and so I'm going to continue to wing it. But there are plans. I'm in talks right now about a few other interesting things. A friend of mine named Jack Bale has he's got a pretty great career in the comedy world and the prank space, and
Mhm.
he's moving into feature films, and so we're working on something together right now to try to put out there. And um, yeah, there's a lot of things coming up that have some potential. I'm really excited about, and one of those is a script that Dion wrote, and it's about a Marine,
Mhm.
who comes back from combat, and his wife has passed away, and there's some drama and things with his daughter, and it's a really interesting script, and it takes a really a neat look at the decisions that we make in our life and how
Mhm.
those choices affect us carrying forward.
Absolutely. And people don't really realize too, in real life, in the military, you sometimes do come home to crazy situations that
Oh
you
yeah.
never foreseen. So one of the things that I used to do with my kids when they were little is we used to play Let's Go Wherever the Wind Blows Us. And I'm a huge firm believer just to fly by the seat of your pants because
Oh
when you
sure.
do that and you're not thinking too hard into things and you just kind of go with that gut intuition, things work out amazingly. So,
Yeah, I think the same thing. And you talk about situations, and the reason that this film that she wrote resonates with me is because when I was in Afghanistan, I got a Red Cross message the last 2 weeks we were there, and it said, recommend that Sergeant Wren returns home. Father's in the hospital, life expectancy unknown. And so here I am, in Afghanistan, and I get this message that's just like, wait, what? Like this isn't supposed to be happening right now. And my dad's body had gone toxic.
mhm.
And so I, flew home like 3 days on planes just to get home. And I got home and my dad's hooked up. He's got a tube down his throat, and he's sitting up in a bed because he can't lay back. They've got him propped up on an angle. And so, you talk about situations that are stressful. Like, I don't think I've found a more stressful situation than that in my life at this point. And granted,
Mhm.
he pulled through eventually. 30 days in the hospital. They said,
Cool.
that he wasn't sure if he was going to make it. He died multiple times on the table. Um, but God had a better plan,
Mhm.
and he's still here for a reason. In fact, he's here at my house right now, which is great.
Wow,
We're we're
that's
good.
amazing.
We're going to the Lowe's after this. I got to go buy some
Mhm.
stuff.
Mhm. Nice. That is
but
so great.
but yeah,
I
that
love
that mentality about flying by the seat of your pants, it's the Maverick mentality from Top
that.
Gun. It's like
Mhm.
you just take an open door.
Mhm.
I mean, what do
Yep.
you got to lose? It either sucks or it doesn't. And I think you win more times than you lose when you jump through those doors.
Absolutely. The last 2 years of my life, I try to say yes a lot more than
Mhm.
no. Once in a great while, I'll say no if I think I'm going to get killed or something,
See,
like
that's
that
that's
might
where
not be
I
a great.
that's where I say yes.
Yeah, it
It's like,
depends.
yeah, is there a chance we're gonna die? I'm in.
Like, I don't mind if I die. I just don't want it to be a slow, painful death. So I guess if I'm going to say yes, like it better be all in or let's think about this because I don't want to be a
Sure.
vegetable.
So let me
Yeah.
ask you a question because you probably
Mhm.
don't get this side of the house, but
Mhm.
all right. So you mentioned that slow death. What is your everybody has this. What's your death fear?
Mhm. Um, my death fear is if my family has to watch me suffer for
Hmm.
any period of time. I don't want that. I want to just go fast for real.
Right.
So I don't want to die of something that's like a slow, long, process for the family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mine is my only fear is drowning.
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Or being buried alive. Those are the two that are like,
Yeah, I've thought about those things. Maybe we watched too many Titanics, or there was some soap opera once where a lady was buried alive and this like evil lady had a camera in her casket and stuff. It was so crazy.
those are two for me that just don't
Mhm.
work.
Mhm. Well, I'm
So
getting cremated, and
mm,
yeah, other than that, I don't know.
yeah, yeah.
So,
No, I have challenged myself to the. I mean, I love jumping out of airplanes. I loved riding bulls. I used to
mhm.
race motorcycles, did flat track on Harley. Like I'm in for excitement. If I'm gonna die, it's gonna be exciting. I don't want to just even when I get old and it's like the end of life is coming, I'm gonna
Yeah,
probably start doing more extreme stuff just to push the
yeah.
envelope.
Yeah, because you want people to remember, like, oh yeah, that was the great whatever, the great 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 uncle that he died, because he was out doing something really cool. Other
Yeah,
than,
yeah,
I don't want to. That's true too. I don't want to be the one that's just like boring. I want
yeah. I
some,
always
you know.
I always said like I would go out, you like when you're driving, this is kind of I guess it's morbid in a way, but it's not. I'm not it's just because I'm an adventurous guy and I'm a Marine, so I think about things. But when you're driving down the road and in the center is the grass and they have those big jumps that go over, like I've always
Yeah.
thought like when I get old, maybe that's the way I go. I just try to Dukes of Hazard that thing one time. Just give it a run.
With my luck, though, I do that, and then I'd like break a couple legs, and like, oh man. Wow, the conversations that I have, I think this is one of the fun ones, definitely. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Again, tell everybody your Instagram, and everybody make sure you go follow Gabe. You're awesome, Gabe.
Thanks. I appreciate it. I'm happy to be here. This is fun. I wish we could keep going. I've got all.
I know. I was just thinking I have another show after this one, but I want to have you on because I think we should talk about like some extreme sports and some of the other things. I want to get
Sure.
more into your bull riding and all that stuff too, because that sounds really fun. I think we should have another recording. So use that
Yeah.
link I sent you and sign up again, and we'll do it.
Yeah, yeah, sounds good. But yeah, you can find me at Gabriel_Wren TN like Tennessee on Instagram. And then our show is Flipping Farms, which you can just type in Flipping Farms and it should pop up. Flipping Farms Show, I believe, is the handle on that.
All right, awesome. So if you're listening to this, Ren, or Ren, call you your last name. Do I have an okay to do a part two? Because if I do, then I'll tell my guest right now, listen for part two next week.
Yeah, let's do it.
All
So
right.
next week I will be actually would be fun. I'll be
Mhm,
in Pennsylvania doing some
mhm,
filming, so we can
mhm.
we can do it from Pennsylvania.
All right. And how I do it too is this is a pre-record. So I have one extra show out in front of you. So it'll be boom, boom. And
Okay,
all my listeners know that. So yeah. So we'll
cool.
do, yeah, if you're listening right now, I'm going to have Gabe on the show again. So make sure you tune in next week.
All right, sounds good.
All right. Thanks a lot, everybody, for listening. And Gabe, thank you so much. If you are listening, make sure you go to the show notes. You can find Gabe's Instagram there. You'll be able to keep up with him on Instagram. Also, if you're listening, make sure you go back through the show archives if you've missed any. We have a phenomenal couple of months coming up. Everybody's re-energized. We have a new president coming up, and I think we're all thankful for that. So
Mm.
it's going to be a great 2025 too.
We've got the
So
House, the Senate, the Supreme Court. I mean, what else you
yes,
need?
yes, yes, yes. So thanks everybody. Until next time.